Most real estate investors look at tenants like a line item. Today, John and I, we're going to be breaking down what we do to make our residents raving fans of the community. And so we're going to be breaking down our core values and some of the guarantees that we offer. These are some of the things that we do to make raving fans of our residents so that we can get higher renewal rates and get higher rents for new leases coming in as well. John, it's great to be here with you.
So good to be here, Mark. And yeah, this is such a really, I think, a big topic and a topic a lot of real estate investors and real estate operators really miss the mark on. And for us, it was very clear from the beginning that the customer is really the resident, right? We at Faris Capital Partners, when we invest in an apartment building, we're buying a business, right? And who is the end user of that business? It's the resident. So in order to drive the best possible returns for our investors, we have to first take really great care of that customer at that business, right? So in this context, that resident. So it was one of those things you and I early connected on when we started talking about our prior businesses, Ferris Team and Mark Spain Real Estate. That kind of relentless focus on client experience and bringing that to this new industry, right? And we've already seen the results of it. So I'm excited to dive in today.
Well, and we should preface this as well. This conversation is that the markets that we buy in, there's no restrictions when it comes down to the rents that we charge. That means that we can provide excellent value and go the extra mile, and we're fairly compensated for that as well. And I think the overall approach of what we're going to be talking about here, it's hard to do if, for example, you can only raise rents by say 2.5%, and they're under market value of say what a tenant is paying by like $500. It's hard to spend money on customer service and to spend that extra time training and going all through that if you're going to be getting the 2.5% either way. And so
Right.
buying in the right markets really should be the prerequisite to the conversation we're having today. Now, don't get me wrong, I still think treating residents, we call them residents versus tenants, and little play on words, but the words we use are important in how we end up treating them. And so this approach of treating people as human beings is a real thing, but going after one of our core values of first class service, the way to do that is to know that you can get fairly compensated. And so the markets we buy in where there's no rent control, what that gives us is it gives us incentives to go the extra mile to see what the market will dictate in regards to the amount of value we're going to be receiving back. And so that's where John, with our backgrounds on in the residential real estate industry, we were, that's how we were successful, is that we
Right.
just provided way more value on how we treated people and that customer service level side of it. And so I think that's where you and I get really jacked up about, is like, if we go the extra mile and just make it wow service. One of the books that we were just talking about, this book, right? The Unreasonable Hospitality. And so this idea of going the extra mile and above and beyond what is normal is something that, if you know you're getting properly compensated in the right marketplace, I think that is the prerequisite to the conversation here.
That's right. And really what, we both learned over our careers is that, often these things aren't really expensive, right? It's just having a little forethought, thinking about what would a resident be going through as they're navigating this move, right? They're going to be stressed out, want to make sure they're making the right decisions. So can we create a curated walk path tour that helpfully, walks them through why this is the best option for them, right? And spending time on the front end learning about them. What do they like about their last living situation? What do they not like? And how can we help solve for those problems? So a lot of it is just having a process and a system in place, right? So in some cases, yes, we're spending some money, we're investing back into the community, and we're going to get into some of those initiatives. But a lot of it is, ensuring we're returning calls quickly, ensuring that maintenance items are resolved in a timely fashion, right? And so just having the standard operating procedures in place. And it's one thing I've learned in life, right? The idea of a habit is really a way to create more freedom for yourself because you're not having to think so hard about the decisions you make on a daily basis, right? So by building in these great habits with our property managers, right, that idea that every call that comes in is super important, we got to call that back as quick as humanly possible. Every time there's a maintenance item, we need to get that resolved as quick as humanly possible. these things are really freeing because now we don't have to think about what happens when this lead comes in, or what happens when a maintenance request comes in. It's all built out. It's all well thought out process and system. It's really that concept of the E-Myth, right? That great book that many business leaders, if you're an entrepreneur, you probably heard of it. If not, you probably read it. But it's that idea of just systemization and thinking about every step that a resident would go through, and how do we optimize each step to make it the best possible living experience in the world.
Yeah, for sure. And so there's standard processes to follow. And one of the processes actually are your core values. And so
Yeah.
it's not like when you think of systems and procedures, you think of like cold kind of, SOP, standard operating procedures, right?
Yeah. All
And
right.
so that is a process, but actually having core values as a process, it's a little more simple as well. That is a process as well. And so this is where if you have the right core values and you really live them, it allows your team members or say your frontline property managers to be able to make really great decisions. Like say, for example, genuine love of people. Like at the end of the day, when you see somebody that needs something, is filtered through our core values to make a really good decision.
Yeah.
It's like genuine love of people. It's like they're going to come up with the solution. And so having core values is a process, but it's sometimes it's easy to think when we're talking about processes that it's you got to follow one point was it one point a of the manual. You need to follow
Yeah.
that in this situation, but in reality that's going to take you so far. But when when on the day to day, if you have a set of core values and you teach your team how to live by those and make decisions through that's a process or that's a habit that you work into the company. And so I think that's like another big part of it, and that's where you're really putting people over policies by filtering through these core values that John and we talk about a lot.
That's right. Yeah, compassion, but with accountability, right? So, you nailed it. It's the idea that you want to have good systems and good policies in place, but understand there are occasionally exceptions to those rules, right? And when filtered through those core values, right, that idea that if somebody's communicating with us and maybe there was some loss of income, maybe one of the spouses lost their job, but they have a good prospect, another opportunity already lined up, let's work out a payment plan. Let's figure out a way to keep that resident in their home and keep them happy versus just immediately moving towards eviction, right? But when and backing up a little bit, Mark, you said, kind of training the team, but what we've also found is that some of these things you can't teach, right? So it's hiring the right people from the start that already sort of subscribe to those values, whether they've defined them internally or not, or maybe, do I have this genuine love of people, right? But, behaviorally, we can find certain behavior types, certain types of people have an affinity for other human beings, right? And so finding people that just love people and they, love that opportunity to step in and help. It can be learned, but it's a lot better when it's just who they are, right, as an individual. So it's not something they have to burn energy doing. It's something they actually gain energy from doing, right? And I think that's so important. So, for us, it's like, how can we design programs that reduce stress, right? And increase safety and, frankly, the dignity, right? Like you said it earlier in the intro, but a lot of investors and operators just treat their residents like some line item, like, did they pay the rent or did they not? And versus, these are people that, are living a full life, no different than us. They have challenges, desires, goals, and maybe they have, a sick family member somewhere. And so seeking to understand before passing judgment. And then once again, it goes back to, are they taking a step towards us, right? We do occasionally have people that just stop paying rent. You can't get them on the phone and we have to make a tough decision, right? But if somebody's coming in saying, hey, I've experienced this challenge, we have to be intelligent, right? We are running a business, as I said, and, we have to make these decisions on a case by case basis. But by allowing the property managers to have a little bit of freedom to make those smart decisions, and then on our side, just holding them accountable to those decisions, it can really lead to something special. And it's worth mentioning, right? But where can we create little opportunities for joy, right? And so, providing a small move-in gift, calling the evening of the first day that they moved in just to make sure everything's going okay. Have the maintenance supervisor pop by just to see if there's any repairs that are needed, after they've been in the property for a couple of days. These are very simple things that don't cost us any money. It's just a little forethought. And, those opportunities to create those moments of joy are something we're always thinking about. And so it kind of really speaks to some of the community programs we've launched, right, Mark? So these high touch, high impact things that we can do just to add a little value to our residents' life on a daily basis. So, maybe you could share with the
Yeah.
listeners some of the things we've been doing.
Well, and it reminds me of this really great book, The Power Moments by Chip Heath. It's like,
Yeah.
like in emotional times through a process, say like moving in, and you really try and monitor like from the initial call to move in and date. It's like there's set times there that are more emotional, and obviously we're going to be diving into some of these initiatives here in a second and be mentioning them where through the year there's maybe some higher emotional times than others as well. And like, how do you work in these, you had said it so well, these little moments of joy along the way, which a lot of times doesn't even cost a lot of money.
Right.
So you had mentioned like gifts on move in and little things along the way. But like one of the things that we do through the year is we have this pop up farmers market. It's like, so regular on-site fresh produce where we have vendors come in and they actually set up for our residents throughout the year. This is something that really doesn't cost us any money, and it provides value because we're thinking about, but we're connecting the dots. There's a At Your Service. It was another book. I just can't recall the authors called At Your Service, and it's one of the best restaurateurs. Who's the guy that he Shake and
Danny Mayer. Danny
Danny
Mayer.
Mayer. Yeah, he wrote
Yeah,
this
that's
book.
right.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
At Your Service, and he talks about collecting dots and connecting the dots.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things, his big lines that stuck with me. And it's like for us, it's like, oh, you know what? Like people love they love to go to the farmers market. Maybe they just can't get out. And so can we bring the farmers market to them and
That's
provide
right.
value not only to our residents, but to the community as well? This is such a great idea, and it's like a win-win-win all the way around. Another thing that we do, back to school day, so we give backpacks out during this time frame because in many times, like because we're renting not to low income housing, but we're more in the middle tier, and in some cases some of these families just they don't have new backpacks, and
Yeah.
so that's a highly emotional time that really doesn't, it costs very little to buy a new backpack from a community standpoint for some of the kids. And like, what a great buzz and emotional time to be able to provide that. You get the kids that love you.
Yeah.
And when the renewal comes for signing up, I mean, do you think they're not going to remember that?
Yeah.
I think that's massive. And we give supplies as well to the kids so that
Yeah.
they have, they're ready to go come school. I mean, that to me, it's a small investment, but it's a huge return on, and we'll say pouring into the relationship. And then, we have these seasonal events where we'll just pop up because one of the things we'll do is we'll add like amenities, grilling stations in. This from time to time, we have seasonal events where we'll actually do these community events to bring everybody together in community. And, part of that is, providing food and providing value to the community as well. These are some of the things that we do to, we'll say, gather community and provide value for residents.
Yeah. Just to add a little more color, right? So, a lot of our investors, a lot of our listeners are Canadian, Mark, and I can't speak to it. Maybe it's the same up in Canada, but in the US, when you're going to public school, your child is often given a shopping list on the first day of school, or it maybe even a week before school, where they're expected to bring some tissues and, things like, Clorox wipes and maybe some markers and pens. And it's the reality of public schooling in the United States, right? And so for a working class person, they may not have a few $100s to go spend on this stuff. And so by providing the backpacks and we stuff it full of some of those supplies, just relieves a little pressure. So it's a nice value add, and the kid has a fresh backpack for a new year of school. But we're also just helping to provide a little relief. I mean, gosh, look at the farmers market. Great example. The cost of groceries keeps going up, so we're providing great fresh produce, but at a discounted cost. So it's a thoughtful thing because we're meeting our residents where they're at and helping them with their day-to-day life. And there's challenges out there. I mean, inflation, all these things, everything's more expensive. So I think from there too, it's really building policies and systems in place that have a resident first approach, right? Compassion plus clarity. So, one of the things you and I first talked about, right? Whenever you can in a business, if you can provide a guarantee, right, you should do that. And so we thought long and hard. It took us a while to come up with this. I remember specifically like a 2 hour call where we were really just talking, what can we guarantee in this process? And we had to get our minds into the psychology of a resident, right? And so one of the first we came up with was the happy in your home. And so what that means is this happy in your home guarantee, that if a resident moves in and within the first 30 days they're unsatisfied with the living arrangements, perhaps maybe they moved in and realized the traffic was a lot more troublesome than they thought, and it was a 45-minute commute, they thought it'd be a 15, or whatever it might be, just come and talk to us and we'll release you of the lease. Now, as a listener, you might say, well, why would you do that? Well, the reality is that if they're unhappy, then we're going to be unhappy, right? They're going to be frustrated, and just potentially even being disruptive to the property manager or to other residents. So if it's not for you, we'd rather just release you of the lease and allow you to find something that's more suitable, so we can get a resident that's really excited about being in our community. The in your corner guarantee, that was a big one. We thought a lot about this one because we recognize that life is, out of our control often, right? We can't control what's happening in the economy. Maybe our company is going through a downsizing, and somebody's through no fault of their own lost their job, or maybe it's a relocation, an opportunity to grow in their career. But they're like, gosh, I got 9 more months of my lease. What is that? How's that going to impact my ability to take on this promotion? Or God forbid somebody in the family gets sick in another state, and the person needs to maybe go move in and help take care. Right, we're seeing baby boomers age. It's something we're seeing quite a bit of, right? And so come on in, talk to us, show us the documentation that this major life event has occurred, and we'll work with you to let you out of the lease. And what was interesting is that really came out of the laws related to veterans, or I should really say active duty military in the United States, right? If an active duty military is redeployed or moved, we have to let them out of the lease. And so we said to ourselves, that is 100% how it should be. And why shouldn't we offer that to our other residents as well, that once again, through no fault of their own, have a major life disruption or change? And it goes
Yeah.
back to, it benefits us as operators, because if I hold somebody's feet to the fire on a lease and they take that job or they move, all of a sudden now I've got an eviction to process and some bad debt to deal with, where maybe we can release them of the lease, get that unit re-rented quickly, and have income flowing back in. But it's interesting, Mark. I think the biggest one for our residents is the speedy service guarantee, and I'll let you take that one because I know that one's super important to you.
So, I mean, and these guarantees, it's so interesting because they can be a little scary for some operators, right? It's because it's like once you offer that, then you got to stick to that. It's like,
Yeah,
well, what
that's right.
happens if everybody comes to you tomorrow and they say that they want to move out? Well, the position that one should stand on, and is where John, you and I, where we've decided to stand on, that we've been seeing massive results with, is that if you're delivering excellent service and you're providing excellent housing, at the end of the day, it's like there's going to be a demand for what you're buying. So this is why it's so important. The assets that we're buying, we really believe in the asset. We believe in the location. We've already done all the metrics for supply and demand. We know if we do a good job that there's going to be residents there. So if we know that, why not guarantee it? And so one of the things that we found in business as well, John, and one of the things that we've been successful in our business is because of differentiation. And so if a resident is looking at all these other places and nobody else is providing these guarantees and we provide the guarantee, do you think you're going to sign more leases because you're offering something that's above and beyond amazing? It's
Yeah.
like, and that's the ground that we're standing on, and that's the ground that for us, we want to provide excellent service. And so these guarantees, they not only will they hold us accountable, but they actually help us convert higher as well. And that's where this next guarantee is so powerful, because so we call it the speedy service guarantee. That's our third guarantee. So basically within 48 hours, if we're not fixing, and we shoot for less than 24, but within 48 hours, if we do not fix a maintenance request, then we actually give a concession to our resident. And so
Hmm.
why that's so powerful is because we track it. And so if for whatever reason we're giving all these concessions out, and because we're not fixing these maintenance requests within a relatively quick time, then that's like a red flag. That's the canary letting us know, like, wait a second, we have a maintenance issue right
Hmm.
now. And so, why this is powerful is because we find out sooner than later. Most groups, they see, oh, we have a maintenance issue, but they don't see that until like a year down the road. And so for us, it's like we identify problems very quickly with this guarantee. And so if a guarantee scares you, it's a good thing, because
Yeah,
it holds you accountable to deliver great service. So,
that's
uh,
right.
yeah, so the three there, John, you want to any more thoughts on the speedy service guarantee? I know that's a big one there that
Yeah.
we really believe
I mean,
on.
I think what's interesting about it is once we put that out there, number one reason people move is they're inconsistent or poor performance when it comes to maintenance requests, right? And you've even shared stories on this podcast. I think that your barber, right,
Yeah,
had been in an apartment for years and literally moved because it took like months to get a leaky toilet fixed, right?
he
It's
was
just something
pissed.
so
He,
simple,
he was pissed. He's cutting my hair.
Yeah.
I'm like, geez, careful those scissors. I know you're getting a little upset talking about your landlord.
Yeah. Yeah, he's getting all fired up,
Yeah,
but it's a
yeah.
real thing. But on our side, what this allows by having this guarantee is we can sit there and look and say, okay, what are the common requests that we're getting? Is there anything we can do from a preventative standpoint to minimize these things from happening? Right. So, for example, we're buying in hotter climates. So in the summertime, it gets warm. So can we pre-order some materials for potential repairs that need to happen for the HVAC compressors, right? And just it in a good way because we're tracking it so closely. Now we can think ahead and create an even better experience because perhaps we're actually making that repair within a few hours, right? And so all of these guarantees actually have an inverse benefit back to us as a company. If somebody doesn't want to live there, we release them. If somebody's going to stop paying their rent because of a life change, let's just make it easy for them to leave. And then obviously with Speedy service, we're monitoring these repairs and making sure we're thinking ahead to get a little bit more forward thinking with preventative measures, right? And then lastly, this isn't really a guarantee, but being open to payment plans when somebody's in communication with us about something that's going on in their life, right? And this will actually transition nicely. So for example, at our newest acquisition, Faris's Residences Georgetown, we had a panicked phone call from a young family, husband and wife, and their wife went into labor extremely premature. And he was in the type of job where he wasn't getting paternity leave, right? He was kind of an hourly type worker, well paid, but when he's not working, he's not making money. And they reached out immediately and said, "Oh my gosh, this is going on," and da 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 da. And long story short, there was an extended period of time in the hospital, but they were communicative with us. We set up a payment plan immediately. Said, "Don't even worry about rent this month. We'll sort it out when you're out of the hospital. Just stay in touch, keep us posted, but focus on your baby, right?" And what we did was they stayed in communication, and we knew they were on their way home. And thankfully, everything was fine with the baby and they're coming home. So we went out and bought some baby supplies, some diapers, some formula, just some binkies and little things like that, and made a nice gift basket, welcomed them home. And, the guy's back to work and they're on the payment plan. They're getting caught up immediately. And I think most operators would probably, I would hope, would have a similar approach to a situation like that, but you might be surprised, right? And so that's just an example. Now, what was so cool about that, Mark, is I didn't have to call the property manager and say, "Hey, maybe we should get them a gift basket with baby supplies." They came to us and said, "Is this something we're able to do? We really want to take great care of this resident," right? And that small investment will pay so many dividends over the years with referrals. It's a small community, word's going to get out, right? And so the message that we wanted the community to receive is that we see you, we're with you, we have your back, right? And we understand that these things happen in life. We also had a situation in Largo not too long ago. It was a single mother. She had a major health challenge, was hospitalized for a period of time, and she was in communication with us. We built out a rent repayment plan, brought her some groceries for when she returned, and just wanted to really just effectively build trust within the community that yes, we are here to run a business, and at the end of the day, there is still accountability, right? You can't trash your unit, you can't disrupt other tenants, but when life happens, we understand, and we're going to work with you to make sure that we, provide that best living experience in the world, even if that means we have some delayed income for a period of
Yeah.
time.
Well,
And Go ahead.
Yeah. No, no, finish your thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I will be candid. We've had a few examples where we've done that,
Mhm.
and the payment plan didn't get made up and didn't get caught up. And so in those situations, we just communicate proactively. And in one situation, we actually helped that resident find some more affordable housing. We literally got on the phone, called some apartment communities in the area, and just said, "Look, this might be a better fit for you where you're at today." And so there's ways that you can go through this process, even in an eviction scenario, where you can help that person avoid the eviction. And it freed up a unit that we can renovate and bring in another resident. But make a few phone calls to help this person out a little bit going through a tough situation. It's the least we can do, right? So it's just these little things that didn't cost us anything but a little bit of time and a little bit of forethought.
Yeah, 100%. And so if you figure if you get one more month's rent, say if it's like $2,000 is what the monthly payment is, maybe give $50 here and there, and that goodwill, it's like you only need like if you do $50 here and there from a give back, we'll say in investing in the community, and that's where it's really important that you have frontline property managers to identify these opportunities where they can be, we'll say, very viral within a community. It's
Yeah.
like if you can, and that's where our core values, we talk a lot. I was just on with one of our property managers last week, on with Corey, and I was like,
Yeah.
we were talking all about, okay, here, five core values, here, are there any legend stories? And she started sharing a legend story, one of the legend stories. And so the whole point there is that having frontline managers know the core values to be able to identify, collect dots, and then connect the dots, reach out, you know, eh, get the okay. I know we talk about as well the idea of having frontline managers that can make decisions. But if it's anything larger, generally they'll reach out and
Yes.
get the okay. But they're collecting dots and connecting them, and that's where they go so far. A little bit of investment up front rather than clinching. It's kind of like this idea: when you give, your hand is open, and so by giving, your hand is open to receive as well, and it,
Hmm.
it comes back to you. So this mindset, it gives back in so many different ways. One is lower turnover. So if there's
Yes.
lower turnover, there's lower costs. Okay. Second is reputation referrals. So like these are big ones. If you get a reputation of being a horrible landlord, that's a hard thing you gotta work through and gain your reputation back. But if you have a reputation working for you, you're going to generate more word of mouth referrals. And so that's really big. The other thing is operational efficiency. So if you have happy residents that are in your units and they're not kicking the doors when they're walking out and pissed off, and they're actually looking at the community, picking up garbage because they care about the community, because the community has been giving back to them, it's just going to be way more, we'll say, simple to operate at the end of the day. And then it creates alignment with the guarantees, because we're held accountable to those guarantees to build and maintain and operate these communities that are in alignment with what the residents want, which are in alignment with us delivering the great service, which actually makes it more profitable as a byproduct as well. So by having
That's
this
right.
mindset, it's one of the best financial investments. Although you got to really be the we'll say the exception out there, because John, for what we've seen out there in the marketplace in commercial real estate, this kind of mindset is not prevalent out there.
That's right. And I think the key factor too is, love people but run a tight ship, right? So in other words, have guardrails for all these things. So we have written criteria and documentation, for lease releases and prepayment plan or, payment plans, et cetera. Clear milestones and check-ins, right? We're always in touch with our PM team. Weekly sessions, daily huddles, but most importantly, we track the data, right? How many instances of these plans have we had, or how many times have we had to do a payment plan, and what were the outcomes, and what was the impact on renewals, right? So if we do all these things but we have a low renewal rate, then we've got a problem, right? Something's not clicking, or we're not connecting the dots, to your point. So reviewing those regularly, making sure that our renewal rates are staying high, because, you sort of touched on this, but every time a resident moves out, there's make ready costs, right? Even if it's a beautiful renovated unit, we're going to spend $1,000 in paint and, just turn costs, and sometimes even more depending on the condition that the unit was left in. And then there's the time the unit is simply down, not collecting rent because we're waiting for that new resident to move in. So I think too, making sure everything is operationalized, right? So playbooks. So when we do these events, there's a process for them. Our vendors contribute. How do we reach out to the vendors to make that happen? Standard scripts. I mentioned that walk tour that we curate for each property, and actually following up with the property managers, whether through secret shops or other check-ins, just to make sure that that process is being followed. Those weekly huddles and the touch points we touched on earlier, and just tracking the budget, right? Our expenses in line with where we need them to be to make sure we're hitting our pro forma projections. So it's not all about giving, it's about running a business in the best possible way. And so what we found is by loving on our residents and giving when appropriate, it absolutely drives the bottom line.
Right on. Well, that's a powerful conversation there, John. It's not we'll say, a regular occurrence that you run up against kind of,
Yeah.
this kind of mindset. But what we've seen it is it really is the most profitable way in this, in this marketplace right now, especially today. I think that people need, we'll say, community, and for other people to see them. It's interesting with social media, we're the most connected we've ever been, but when you start looking at the data points of where people are at from a mental state,
Yeah.
we're the most disconnected right now. And
It's a
so,
thing. Yeah.
right.
Loneliness is on the rise.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere the average adult has like 1 to 2 friends. It used to be like 7 to 8. So
Yeah. But they
it
have
is
like,
something that's
they have
needed.
they have 200 though on Facebook, right? It's
That's
more
right.
surfacey versus,
Yeah.
so this is where we're really playing into this, and we're seeing it actually by, the numbers by, overshooting our projected rents, and our renewal rates are really strong as well. So, if this is all interesting to you, you'd like to learn a little bit more about being able to invest in these large 100 unit plus buildings, to be able to partner with us, what something like that would look like, go to fulloutinvesting.com. And there's a whole video and a breakdown of what a sample deal is, and then what it would actually look like investing with us. Go to fulloutinvesting.com. Thanks for listening, guys. If you enjoyed this show, you can go ahead and subscribe to the channel, where, or perhaps you might even know a high net worth investor that you think would benefit from the conversation. So, in the meantime, really appreciate you guys tuning in to the Full Out Real Estate Investor. We love and believe in you guys. Keep dreaming and investing big.